Welcome to Your Thoughts, Your Reality with Michael Cole, the podcast that shines a compassionate light on the journey of veterans battling through life's challenges. Michael is a dual elite certified neuroencoding specialist in coaching and keynote training presentations, dedicated to guiding military veterans as they navigate the intricate pathways of post-deployment life. Join him as we delve into the profound realm of neuroencoding science, empowering these brave individuals to conquer universal battles, procrastination, self-doubt, fear, and more. Together, let's uncover the strength within you to re-engage with families and society, forging a new path forward.
Hello, everybody. So my guest just dropped off, so we're going to hang out for just a second and be back as soon as I see him pop back on. And he's back. Hey, Marty. All right. So today I'm very honored to have Marty Strong on. He's a retired Navy SEAL who served 20 years in the Navy as both an enlisted SEAL and an officer, including combat deployments. He's a CEO of Warriors Haven USA, and it's a game changer for vets. So I'm super excited to really get into this and talk to him about that. It is a vocational focused nonprofit helping veterans transition into meaningful civilian careers. And man, it is needed. And I'm, again, super excited to be talking to you about that. He's also an author. I think multiple authors, as I recall. He's been multiple books. I think it's 13 I see down there, 13th book on his information. And of course, he's a strategic thinker, translating lessons from special operations into leadership, resilience, and adaptability for life and after the military. Marty is a veteran who has restarted multiple times. And I promise most people in the world, when you think back, you have too. We're going to talk about moving from the battlefield to the boardroom and proving that reinvention is possible at any age or stage. And of course, Marty is an advocate for veterans and their families as well. So super to have you on, sir. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I'm glad we got the tech stuff figured out.
Man, you covered a lot of ground there. I can't dunk a basketball. You missed that one. Yeah, so I think the interesting part of the story of my life, or the journey of my life, is that comment that you made in the intro about the restarting. I like most Americans, when we're kids, we think that you have to get good grades, keep your nose clean, progress through the different school systems, get to the point where you can get into a college, get good grades so you can progress and get a good job. And then, life's your oyster and you kind of move forward. And my personal journey, my personal experience, both my life and watching other people's lives and talking to people kind of at different points along their lives, it doesn't work like that at all. That's still kind of the quote unquote American dream, but that started in the 1940s and 50s with a focus on school and education, because the American dream before that was come to the United States, go west, find a chunk of land, build something.
Right.
That used to be the American dream. Be an entrepreneur, take chances, and go for it. So my story is kind of along those lines of the go for it side, and not so much the linear path.
So let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, so what was, of course, we talked a little bit about in the introduction your story. So what if we can, what made you or what drew you to join the military?
I was trying to escape Nebraska for a couple of reasons. I was born and raised in Nebraska up until I was 11 years old, and then I moved to Japan for 4 years. My parents got a divorce. Me and my brother and sister went back to Nebraska, to the same house we'd rented out while we were in Japan. And there was really nothing to do in those days in Nebraska, unless you were a football player, good enough to get on the Cornhuskers. That was pretty much it. And I didn't know about Warren Buffett in those days, but I did know that Mutual of Omaha had the Wild Kingdom show. So that was it. I've just kind of lined up everything that you had going for you in 2 sentences. Trying to get away from the family life was a huge motivation. And the second one was there really wasn't anything going on there. We were all getting in trouble all the time because we were so bored. So I joined the Navy to escape both those situations, and then kind of stumbled forward into the thing that I ended up doing for 20 years.
Absolutely. Um, oh, Mutual of Omaha, man, that brought back memories like instantly. So with that setting, guys, just so you know, we do have a delay we're playing with right now. So we're doing the best we can right now to pivot and move forward, and we're going to do that successfully, I might add. So Marty, when after the military and the uniform came off, what was the hardest part during that transition, if you were, of who you were to let go of, what? Hold on, who you were and what did you let go of to discover about yourself, the other side of that identity shift? So where did that kind of come from, of who I am, who I was to who I am now? Because I know a lot of military veterans that I talk to, work with, et cetera, deal with that. And that's why I focus on that reintegration period. Can you talk to me about that for yourself?
Sure. So there's a lot more out there for veterans. The internal programs before you leave the service are much better than they were when I retired. And the problem was everybody in the SEAL teams anyway. You had one or two jobs you could possibly do. You might be able to become an emergency medical tech. You might be able to become a law enforcement professional. That's about it, because that's all we knew how to do. We knew how to, be gunslingers and parachute out of planes and lock out of submarines. And there's not a whole lot of need for that in the commercial market. So, and I knew that, because I talked to people that had gotten out and came back and said, "Wow, it's really tough out here. I can't find anything." They would say it's just like being at about 3 months before you graduate from high school, or 3 months before you graduate from college, and you don't know what you want to do yet. So you have some basic understanding and skills. You have some idea of how you operate in the academic environment, and in the military sense, you have an idea of how you operate in the military environment, the military context. But I stepped out, and I even had an undergraduate degree in business and an MBA. The first thing I found out when I went into this financial services industry was, in none of that education, never talked about or touched on selling.
Mm.
Selling was not a part of it. And everything outside was about selling. Even if you were going to manage money, you had to go out and find clients. You had to convince them to hand you their life savings or a portion of their life savings. You had to be able to explain to them the logic of what you were going to do with their money. And so that was the first hurdle. I didn't know how to sell, and I had nothing to really fall back on. The prospecting part of that, and that was all unknown to me. I was not surrounded by millionaires in the SEAL teams. So I had no experience or direct understanding of the emotions that people have around money. I had never met anybody that had worked their way up, say from a high school graduate to become a multimillionaire and being bankrupt multiple times. It was a whole different kind of a quote unquote warrior. That as I progressed in that profession, I kept meeting these people. They were incredible. I mean, incredible stories, failing, standing up, failing, getting back up, failing, and then succeeding and succeeding. And they had all the scar tissue, and they were usually willing to explain and tell you that story, which to me was something that seemed to be missing in anything I'd ever read going through the business education. There wasn't. This is more like reading the journals of people in the Civil War, World War I, World War II, about what was happening on the battlefield. The friends lost and all that. And so the entrepreneur, the battle-scarred entrepreneur, became something that I really respected. And so that was kind of on the downside. My inability to sell, I had to learn that from scratch. And the fact I didn't know anything about the money world, not the world of money. I knew how to kind of invest it, but I didn't know anything about the people and the dynamics behind that. What I had going for me was I was disciplined, which is that's kind of a normal trait for people that come out of the military. I was trainable. Everything in the military revolves around training and preparing and training, preparing. And when things change, you train to the new standard. When equipment changes, you change to the new equipment. When enough people come in or you get put into a new unit, the new unit trains to a new team standard, and it never ends, right? And you train everybody around you. You train yourself to be better than even they're training you to be, especially in the elite forces. And so I had that going for me, except the outside environment, nobody wanted to train you. Nobody really cared that much about you being that much better. They basically said, go out there and just do it, which for a while, it felt like I was just kind of floating. How am I going to learn this? So I started calling people. Do you know anybody that's a salesman? This is true. I mean, do you know anybody that's a salesman? Do you know anybody that knows how to do this thing called prospecting that I'm hearing about? And bit by bit, I started to create this little network of people, a couple of relatives. They had a glossy monthly magazine that had all the success cases in it from around the country. And I thought, oh, what the hell? I'll just start calling the people up in these stories. They're probably going to hang up on me because they're all really doing well. I mean, making $1 million+ a year, right? And every single one of them was willing to tell me exactly what they were doing. Not only that, they were willing to tell me their whole kind of, first, second act of their life play as a professional, where they screwed up, where they took the wrong path, how they corrected, and then how they figured out what they were good at and then focused on it. So it took me 7-8 months for what I just described before I started to go out and actually start landing new clients on a regular basis. So that, not a fear of failure, being open-minded, being willing to be trained or train yourself, at least understanding the gap analysis. I know what I know and I know what I don't know. I have to fix the gap part of this. And then if no one is going to train me, then it's up to me. I got to go do it. But I just created kind of a mastermind of all these different allies, as if I was in the teams and I had a training team that was responsible for training me. I just recreated that. And I stumbled into it. It wasn't like I was super genius. I sat there on day one and said, this is what I'm going to do. I mean, I just stumbled and attempted all kinds of things and failed. The last part is kind of the positive part. I found out that I mentioned before the stress of money. Well, I was pretty good at stress. I was pretty good at when everything's falling apart and going to hell in a handbasket, being poised and comfortable. So when something would happen in the market and my clients would get on the phone and call in a panic, mostly because whatever they saw on TV that day was amping up the panic, amping up the emotional part, right? To get eyeballs on screens. I found that I was very good at kind of comforting them and settling them and reminding them of the plan that we'd put together and saying, why don't you come on in? When something bad happened in the market, it was clear, I would invite people to come in and go through a review and everything, where I found out my peers later on were dodging the phone. They didn't have that emotional maturity. They didn't have that psychological resilience. They didn't have that thing that I got from the military. And so they would hide. And I ended up getting a lot of clients whenever there was a really bad event in the markets, because my clients would say, well, that's not what Marty did. Marty actually brought me in. He engaged, and a friend of mine that I referred, he engaged him too. And he's not even a big client. He talked to everybody to make sure they understood what was going on. That was directly from the military experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said so many good things. I've tried not to jump in. So, I just want to go back 18 steps. All right. Pay attention, everybody that's listening and, on podcast forums, future, and of course now, it's about getting back up. Right. And listen, man, I've done the same thing. Life has not been at just this amazing straight upward trajectory, right? But when you fail, if you call it that, right, you're not failing. That's just your opportunity to learn. It's just your opportunity to learn and move forward. And that's exactly the story of Marty Strong, right? Here's the other thing I really want to dive into just for a second is when everybody else was scared and hiding, Marty said, no, this is an opportunity to grow for myself because I have these skills, but I also can comfort these people, make them feel better. And everybody, when the market drops, it's an opportunity. Don't panic. It's not a panic moment, right, Marty? I mean, it's not a the world is ending moment. It's literally it drops, and then there's a real opportunity to make money. So I love that Marty sat there and said, "Yeah, that's okay. We'll talk. We'll figure this out. I'm going to calm you down, and then we're going to benefit on the other side, I'm sure." So there's so many more things you talked about, Marty, but I just had to touch base on those things that when life seems dire, it's generally an opportunity to grow for yourself and or financially. And the last thing, I know Marty's trying to be quiet right now because we have that delay. Thank you, Marty. The last thing I want to say real quick on this is the news, like Marty said, it's there to create drama, so you pay attention. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to get political or anything else on the news. I'm not that guy. So, Marty, with that said, is there anything else you want to touch base on that before we jump into Warriors Haven, USA?
The only thing I would say is, and I may mention it later because it's kind of a theme, most veterans think, like I mentioned earlier, like at the end of high school, the end of college, that you have to find the perfect path. And if you can't find the perfect path, you're a failure. There's something wrong with you. Everybody else seems to know exactly what they want to do. Well, that's not the case. Most people don't know what they want to do. They have influencers, whether it's family or friends, trying to directing them and patting them on the back for the decision they made. And then they get into whatever they're doing and they're miserable, or they're just not a good fit. And what I tell everybody is, especially when I do lectures for veteran transition, that's okay. That's the way the real world works. The universe is constantly shaking things up. As you just mentioned, there's always opportunity because there's always change going on. Whatever you think is going on based on your past understanding, it may be completely different or maybe slightly different. So just apprentice yourself to the world when you walk out as if you're brand new. Learn everything you can. What's the status quo today, the reality today? And then look at all the things you'd like to do some research, and like I said, be an apprentice. Set aside the fact that you maybe had high rank, or you were fantastic at whatever you did in the military. Humble yourself a little bit. You want to own a restaurant? And apprentice yourself. Learn it from the ground up. And then when you know every aspect of the operations of a successful restaurant, then go and buy a restaurant or go for a job that's managing a restaurant. That's how you kind of get ahead. And then you do that for 2 or 3 years and you find out, I don't really think I like the restaurant business. Start the whole process again. There's nothing that says you have to be one thing for the rest of your life.
Absolutely love that you said that. I cannot tell you how that lands for me. I've been in the construction industry or that similar niche most of my life, and at 51 years old, I said, what do I want to do when I grow up? So, and literally use the same skill sets to do what I'm doing now. I still have a construction company and all the different stuff, but it's really cool that you said that. So, with that said, Mr. Strong, it's kind of a cool thing Mr. Strong. With that said, let's really get into Warriors Haven, USA. I've been super excited to have you on to really talk about this and how this is a game changer, everybody. So please listen up and let everybody know about what Marty's doing here. Talk to us about what it is, first of all, then we'll get into a lot more specifics. We got about 10 minutes left, so.
Well, first of all, I think Mr. Strong is a cool name. It sounds like a Bond character. So I'll see if I can leverage that a little bit. Thank you for that. So Warriors Haven, USA. You just add .com to that name and you go right to our site. It's a vocational education foundation. What that means is everything under the sun. We aren't trying to find housing for veterans. We're not trying to find. We don't have psychiatrists and psychologists on staff to deal with PTSD, traumatic brain injury, etc. We aren't trying to get scholarships for the kids of veterans or for the veterans themselves. there's a lot of things that people are doing out there in great organizations, and that, like say Tunnels for Towers or something, what they're doing, they're really, really good at. So the founder and myself, I'm a co-founder, Pete Gary, who was a Force Recon Marine for 8 years. We met in 1994 and been friends ever since. He originally conceived of finding the niche, the unserved niche in veteran services that is a gap of some sort. So I'll give you an example. Most of the government grants, whether it's the federal government or state governments, are grants that'll hand you a check for tuition so that you can go into a school. And most veterans don't know how to get those grants, but they're personal. There's no intermediary. So that's a difficult thing for us to get involved in, other than just having the links to these things and maybe some guidance on how to fill out the grant paperwork. We wanted to be more hands-on. So we've actually created a training facility. Right now it's 1,200 square feet, which is a wood and metal shop in Florida. We also have a 5-acre farm complex. We've got horses. We're building a 9,000 square foot, 2-story vocational training center. We're doing virtual business academy right now. So we've got veterans that come in virtually. We link them up with people, and sometimes it's depending on, it could be an early stage business that they're working on, or they could actually be somewhere where they're having problems with scaling, and it doesn't matter what the business is. Oddly enough, I thought when we started doing that, we would get, smaller scale businesses, a food truck or, a restaurant or something like that. And the first person was a former Army enlisted guy who worked his way up through college after he got out and got a PhD in physics. And 7 months ago, he started a software company. He's developing software. And so he's doing patenting. And I happen to know lots and lots of people in technology. I've been on lots of technology boards. So my mentoring for him initially was connecting him with people that know how to get rounds of funding for his company, people that know. The guy I connected with has 100 patents filed, very, very successful patent guy. Other people that are kind of peripheral to what he's doing with the software and the sensor systems and things, people that sell those things, so he can tell them about the market, who's buying, who's not buying, pros and cons of doing commercial only, government only, or combination. So I'm just kind of, in that case, I'm the facilitator. Now, he has some mechanical stuff he wants to fix or understand. And so we've helped him a little bit about like hiring and firing, and do you bring in full-time employees, or do you use freelancers, all that kind of stuff. Do you create an office, or do you work out of your garage? These are things that may not seem important, but they're not instinctive. What most people do is they copy what they see in the culture. So if they've seen movies and everybody's got an office, everybody gets an office, at least an office, So between myself and Pete and a lot of other successful business people, we can answer those questions and connect them. So that's kind of the academy piece, which is, it's mentoring and coaching. Now we're getting into some virtual courses. So I've got 3 very successful entrepreneurs, one in AI, one in cyber software, and one in business planning. The business planning one has a very successful book, and they've all built online courses. And they've all told me they will let us have those courses set up, and we can bring veterans in. And so in those 3 particular categories, veterans can come in and learn about those three different categories. So that's going to explode faster because it's virtual. We don't have to build a building to do it. But we've already conducted woodworking with veterans. We've already done canine and equine therapy with veterans. There's 3 levels. First level is 1 day. It's essentially an experience. Main point of it is either therapeutic or give them a little taste of what woodworking is and metalworking. I'm talking, we got high-end lasers and lathes and big 3D printers and every kind of bell and whistle you can think of. So level 2 is anywhere from a week to a month in duration, and we teach them a skill. Now that skill may be to know how to use a particular key machine that's in every single manufacturing plant, or how to use multiple machines if they want to start doing things on their own, whether for themselves or to sell objects that they make. And the culinary side is the same thing. They want to do it for their own pleasure. Then the level 2 is to learn specific capabilities, to learn to have knowledge and capabilities. So when they walk out, they can actually do something or build something or cook something they never could before. Level 3 is a much longer program, and it's an apprentice to onboarding program. So we've got lots of different kinds of industries. Lots of people in corporate America have signed up. Not just huge companies, middle-sized companies. We have Michelin level restaurants that have said, you teach them how to use these particular tools in the kitchen, this particular normal operating system in the kitchen, how the flow works, how the patterns work, how it's managed. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to bring them into that kitchen. We'll bring them to our kitchen. We'll pay them, and we'll take them from that point forward. So that's great. That's the whole community, the whole kind of American kaleidoscope, all pitching in when they can, where they can. So that's pretty much what Warriors Haven USA is. It's an attempt to address that niche, and I think we'll probably stay that way because the most successful of all charities are this way, I think, and a lot of businesses are too. The more successful ones tend to find a lane, and they get really, really good at it, and therefore they're delivering like a laser beam right to the beneficiaries that they targeted.
Yeah, absolutely love it. There's so much opportunity for vets with what you're doing because it is a gap, right? And I'm so glad that you literally, I'm sorry, you and who's the other person you're working with?
Pete Gary.
Thank you. I just wanted to get the name out there again. Absolutely, just doing amazing, beautiful things with this because I've not heard when I talked to you when you wanted to be on the show. It's like I haven't heard about anybody else doing all the things you're doing, and it's just I truly believe it's a game changer. So grateful you're out there doing what you're doing, man. With that said, we got about 2 minutes left. How do people reach out to you, sir?
Well, there's two ways. MartyStrong.com. That's pretty simple. That's all my personal information, my speaking programs, access to my books are on the homepage. I'll take you straight through to Amazon. For Warriors Haven USA, you just go warriorshavenusa.com, and it'll tell you everything about the programs. And we have bios for all the people that are in the board that kind of oversees us, including mine and Pete's.
Fantastic. So I know I told you this is how we structure with 3 questions or 3 tips at the end. I'm going to actually ask for a 4th one from you because you're a plethora of information, and it's usable information, which is the fantastic part about this. So I just want to start off with the 3 tips. So if you can give us 3 tips to get veterans and their families further faster.
All right. So the first one is, if you listen to what I said earlier in the interview, lower your expectations to the reality of the environment as you're walking out of the service. And that's okay. You started in the service as a brand new person that didn't know anything, and it took time, sometimes a couple of years before you were considered to be a professional. It's no different when you come out. So there's no rush. There's no instant success. So give yourself a break, take a deep breath, and then kind of advance forward with that mindset. The second thing is that there's no such thing as linear success. I actually used to teach a class called nonlinear success, and I'd use people like Ulysses S. Grant and others that zigzagged all over the place and failed and succeeded. All of a sudden, this guy becomes the president of the United States, right? So people just assume that there's a path that's linear, and that's the way winners go. They follow that path. There's no such thing as that. As a matter of fact, it's more of an anomaly if you find somebody who actually did that way, and then if you assume that that's not the case, then you're okay with changing course. You're okay with trying something for a couple of years and then moving on to something else. You can experiment with life. You can experiment with your vocation, and that's okay. That there's nothing wrong with that. And the third one would be, I think, I wrote about this a lot in Be Different, my last business leadership book. There's a stigma attached to people past, childhood that come up with crazy, wild ideas, that have an idea and have a sense of awe and wonder about the idea, that they have a big dream. The institutions have pounded that out of us. They've taught us to, color in between the lines, and don't raise your hand and don't do something different because you won't get the grade you're supposed to get. So you end up as a 20-year-old and you're really thinking like a 70-year-old, like the world hasn't changed and I'm not going to change and that's the way it is. You're stuck in your own rut. And you think that's okay because that's the way you've been conditioned to collide, obey, all these things intellectually. And that is, I've done a lot of work on the brain science side. The brain unless there's some biological medical problem, the brain of a 65-year-old is just as creative as the brain of a 6-year-old. So that's the third thing. You can reinvent your mind. You can learn again. You can do all these things. You can come up with ideas. You just have to practice it so that part of your brain gets used to it. And you may not get rewarded by the world, the system, and all that right away because they tend to reward conformity. But the capability, the ability to do that is in every one of us.
Absolutely. Mic drop. Just mic drop right there. Absolutely beautiful, man. I love that you say that. It is so true. It is so true. And the last thing, and again, I'm throwing you under the bus here because we didn't talk about maybe doing this, but it just goes along with those 3 tips. If there was one thing you could tell a veteran coming out of service and reintegrating into civilian life, coming home, from all of your experience, what would it be?
Seek out a successful veteran and make them your friend and your mentor, and maybe connect with more than just one. And listen to their journey, listen to their trials and tribulations and failures, because they've arrived. And that gives you the light at the end of the tunnel. And also because it's another veteran, they can relate and you can relate, and it'll probably resonate.
Absolutely love that. And I just want to add to it. When you like in your story, Marty, when you were talking to people and trying to figure it out, right? People that are successful and are good people, grateful people, and of what they've accomplished, and not with an ego, most of them are going to share their secrets. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people, mentors, whatever the case may be, and I'm like, oh no, they're not. This is a while ago, obviously. I've learned differently in the years, but oh yeah, I don't want to bother them. I don't this, I don't that, and then they just light up, and I just got chills. They just light up and literally go through and tell you a lot of the secrets, or mentor, or whatever the case may be. It's a beautiful thing to find those people in your life that get you further faster. So like Mr. Marty Strong here. So Marty, with that said, thank you so much for being on the show. I really, really love what you're doing. And I'd love to have you back on. So if that works for you at some point.
Love to. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. So with that said, time is the most precious resource we have as human beings. Marty and everybody listening on the podcast forums later on, thank you for taking the time out of your life to spend it and learn and grow and be part of the mission. And with that, we're out of here.
Thank you for joining us on another insightful journey of Your Thoughts, Your Reality podcast with your host, Michael Cole. We hope the conversation sparked some thoughts that resonate with you. To dive deeper into empowering your thoughts and enhancing your reality, visit empowerperformancestrategies.com. Remember, your thoughts shape your reality, so make them count. Until next time, stay inspired and keep creating the reality you desire. Catch you on the next episode.